Unlike the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, I don't have any whirring computers churning out supposedly authoritative inflation and growth forecasts. I'm not able to instruct battalions of alleged experts to produce economic models. Nor do I have a highly paid chief economist with dozens of highly trained staff at my beck and call. Even so, I can tell Mr. Bailey something for free. The bank's recent forecast that inflation will reach 10% by the end of the year is almost certain. For goodness sake, yesterday's figure was 9%, and it's only May. The trajectory is sharp. I would have more confidence in the bank and Mr. Bailey if they hadn't consistently underestimated the growth in inflation over the past year. 12 months ago, Threadneedle Strait opined that inflation might edge above its target of 2% by the end of 2021, but that would only be by November. A few doubts were creeping in. The normally unruffled Andrew Bailey conceded that inflation might rise to 5% by early 2022 before leveling out and starting to decline. Granted, that was before Russia invaded Ukraine in late February, and the consequent soaring price of energy and food. That has made things much worse. But inflation was already building up throughout last year, and the bank seemed there were, in fact, lots of people pointing out the dangers. One of them was the bank's outgoing chief economist, Andy Hall. Last June, when the most recent inflation figure was 2.1%, he suggested it could nearly double before the end of the year. He was right. Under Mr. Bailey's direction, the bank has been shamefully relaxed about rocketing. Its Monetary Policy Committee has raised interest rates, its key weapon in curbing the scourge of inflation, too little and too late. They stand at 1%, extremely low by historic standards. Mr. Bailey's laid-back attitude to life is confirmed by the revelation that the bank's officials are obliged to come in for only 1 day a week, with their long-term target set at just half of the. Such casualness is unforgivable when the nation is in the grip of an economic. To his discredit, in 2019 when he was boss of the Financial Conduct Authority, Mr. Bailey allegedly nodded off in discussions with advocates for the victims of the British Steel pension scheme scandal, although it's hard to be confident that this man and the bank will get on top of it. On Monday, during a session in front of a Commons committee, Mr. Bailey was about as impressive as a man trying to sweep leaves during a faced by a full-blown crisis. The habitually complacent governor seemed suddenly overtaken by. He told MPs that families face apocalyptic food price increases, and admitted that he felt helpless over. This wasn't the reassurance hard-pressed families are looking for. If the governor feels helpless in the face of inflation, which the bank is enjoined by the government to keep at 2%, one wonders what the point of this central banker, and his £575,000 annual salary, really. The all-important question is whether the Bank of England's failings are the result of having the wrong man in the top job, or whether there are deeper systemic problems in an independent central bank unaccountable to vote. Almost exactly 25 years have passed since the incoming Labour Chancellor, Gordon Brown, stunned the then-governor by making the bank independent of the government. The idea was that monetary policy would no longer be subordinated to calculations of political. Until now, the experiment has worked well. For a quarter of a century, we have had strikingly low inflation in comparison with the previous 20. The bank dealt successfully with the financial meltdown of 2008-09. Huge quantitative easing, essentially printing money, did not then lead to rising. Our present predicament is the first time things have gone badly wrong with the bank since 1997. It is tempting to say, and some Tory MPs are saying it, that in these grim circumstances the country shouldn't be at the mercy of a governor who doesn't have to. It is an alluring argument. The spectacle of the unelected and overpaid Andrew Bailey showing such impassivity in the eye of the storm makes one question the whole system. A politician who behaved in the same way would be swiftly hounded out of office. Unless Mr. Bailey and his colleagues get their act together pretty soon, there will be more legitimate questions about whether it is right in a democratic society for the Bank of England to be so. Nevertheless, the crisis is surely more a result of the shortcomings of a group of people, foremost among them the governor, than of a system that has, after all, operated efficiently in the recent past. Indeed, one could argue that the problem is not that the bank is too independent, but that it has not been independent enough. Policymakers in Threadneedle Street realize how damaging to the government's finances even a small increase in interest rates would be, since debt payment. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, each additional 1% increase in interest rates adds £10 billion to the government's annual debt interest. At the same time, higher interest rates unfortunately mean higher mortgages, and therefore add to the cost of living. The Bank of England's sluggish approach to putting up interest rates has had the effect of providing Chancellor Rishi Sunak with some relief, though the extent to which this was deliberate is debatable. At all events, the bank forgot that the worst enemy for any government or society is out-of-control inflation, which. However much higher prices can be blamed on external factors, inflation can't be brought down without raising interest. The most revealing remark made this week came from Mervyn King, who was governor of the Bank of England from 2003 until 2013. He told Andrew Marr on LBC Radio, "The idea that interest rates of 1% are going to have much impact on the inflation rate is really very strange." Lord King, who has studied German hyperinflation of the 1920s, doesn't only criticize the Bank of England. Even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he accused major central banks of adopting the King-Canute theory of inflation. By this, he means copying the English king, who is commonly believed to have thought he could turn the tide and defeat the forces of. Lord King rightly warns that inflation won't remain low just because we say it. That has been the bank's disastrous approach. Can the lackadaisical Andrew Bailey be sacked, which is within Rishi Sunak? Probably not, without precipitating a collapse of confidence in the city. But he should take a good hard look at himself. Inflation is a curse. It is the enemy of prosperity, and the destroyer. It is going to get worse. How much worse depends on the ability of this unaccountable governor to change.